Hey everybody, with me today in this interview in the rotunda at the Louisiana State Capitol is, well, you'll recognize LaSalle in the background, of course, the guy who founded Louisiana, but with me is State Representative Raymond Crews. Senator Crews, thank you for coming on. They really appreciate it.
Pleasure to see you, William.
You got some really good bills that I want to talk about. Well, you got some things that you've navigated a little bit differently that I think are interesting, but we'll go through your legislation now. You've got HB 81 provides relative to the use of certain names and pronouns. Do we need to save that one for the end?
Well, I can take it whenever you want.
We'll do that one right now real quick then.
So that one, yes, that one's intended to help the parents, the teachers, and the students. The parents, because we don't want to leave them out of the conversation. So there are children that are easily influenced by social media, as you know, and peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes they are tempted to adopt new identities by ways of new names and pronouns without the knowledge of the parents, and we don't want that. We want the parents to be involved and be responsible. They're responsible for the upbringing of the child, so they should be able to know what the child's trying to do in school. We don't want any secrets from the parents, so that's what this bill was really intended to do. It also allows them, the parents, if they want to change the name or whatever of the student, they can do that and submit a form, but the idea is to keep them involved. Now, we do also want to keep in mind that teachers have certain rights, right?
Exactly.
And one of those, chief, is their religious and their moral conviction. So if the child wants to identify as a different gender or whatever, and the teacher's like, you're obviously not a female, and your birth certificate says you're male as well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to call you Sally, even though you want to be called Sally, because I don't think that's right for me to be drawn into a deception of the rest of the people.
So this is
myself.
a protection for teachers too.
It also protects the teachers, yes.
Nobody talks about that.
But that's going to be a rare instance. Most of the time these kids want to be called by their names or maybe a nickname, and that's fine. We're good with that. But we don't want to put the teacher in a place where they have to adopt something that they obviously think is not the truth. So
Right.
That's what that bill does.
Well, this bill sounds like it would have protected my name.
Yeah.
You know, my name on my birth certificate is William Wallace.
Right.
But my teachers called me Billy.
Yeah, well.
And they called me, but I wanted to be called William.
Well, if you definitely, then we could go with William.
But so this legislation would have helped me in this?
That's correct.
Okay, well, and also, like you said, protects teachers, but nobody's talking about the serious side of this, which is the fact that you didn't do this for any narrative reason or any ideological reason other than to keep parents involved and protect some teachers.
That's correct. Well, and I mean, this is one of those bills where we're intended to keep school. We don't want the social programming being advocated for here. So if someone wants to tell Billy, call yourself Sally, we're going to involve the parents and say, hey, do you really want to be part of that?
If the parents say it could be Sally, then it could be Sally.
It could be Sally, but the teacher also has the right to opt out
She
there and
has
say,
opt
listen,
out.
this doesn't match up with the gender on the birth certificate. I'm going to call them by the one on the birth certificate. Now, this does not prohibit changing the birth certificate, and then you actually do have to go with the birth certificate, but that's a whole different issue.
But this sounds to me like it protects more freedoms than what people are saying.
That's right. They're
People are
talking about the restrictions all the time.
People are attacking this for the restrictions, but you, if you look at the flip side that you're talking about right now, it talks about all the freedoms that it protects.
That's correct. So it's a great bill. I hope people will look at it.
And parents' rights.
Promote
too.
it. That's correct.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank
all right,
you.
we got HB 236 provides relative to the frequency of disbursement of salary to state employees.
Yeah, that one I went ahead and what we call deferred and said I'm not advancing that one anymore. But the idea was we pay all the state employees regularly on a 2-week cycle. Well, the problem is every now and then we end up with more weeks, more cycles of payment than we did, and it messes up the whole payment processing stuff and how we do the budgeting. So I was just trying to smooth that out a little bit. So we'll look at that later down the road, but it just wasn't going to work out this year.
Need some tweaking so you can do the right thing and,
That's right.
and tweak it and bring it back later. I like that. HB 427 provides relative to disclosure by healthcare facilities to patients of prices for certain items and services.
Yeah, now that has to do with there's a federal law right now that says you need to provide some price transparency. The problem with it is they weren't enforcing that bill, that law. So it's been 2 years, and some of the hospitals in the state are not compliant. I think 6 out of the system are, and another 20 some are not. We're like, well, how about the state pursue some that same issue and say, we'll be the enforcers, we'll go out and look for them, and we'll make sure they do that. But I just heard the other day, so we're changing the bill up a little bit, that the Centers for Medicare Services, CMS, they are going to go ahead and say, state, you go do this for us. So I'm looking at some revisions of that, so I deferred it today, so it'll come back next week with some amendments in response to what CMS has done.
So in this case, deferred till next week, not until the next session.
That's correct.
Okay, we got it. We got HB 458. We did 456. 457 is Vital Records Birth Certificate. Provides for commemorative certificate of miscarried child.
Yeah, this gives mothers the opportunity to request basically recognition for their unborn child if they lost them. So right now that's limited to 26 weeks or after you can do that. But we wanted to open it up because there's several mothers that have already named their children or whatever, and the children's just not born. You know, it's dead when born or delivered or whatever early. So we want to give them an opportunity, a miscarriage, whatever, to get some kind of commemoration of that. That was a human being that didn't make it to life on this side of the, being born. So we're trying to recognize that.
I appreciate it. There's a lot of mothers that's very important to. I appreciate you thinking about them. A couple more quick questions for you before you go in this session. One, I heard before you were a state rep, you flew in the Air Force, is it?
I did. Air Force and the Air Force Reserve.
And you flew B-52 bombers?
That's right, and that's how I arrived in Louisiana the latest time.
No pun intended, right?
I actually had some time here as a child in Shreveport. My dad was a petroleum engineer, but then we moved all over, and then the Air Force brought me back to Louisiana over 25 years now. So.
But you flew the biggest plane in the military, right?
The C-5's bigger.
Oh, the C-5's bigger. Yeah. But my question for you is, I see how much you guys debate on the House floor here. Uh-huh. What's easier, debating the chicken sandwich on the House floor or flying a B-52?
I don't know. You got to deal with a lot of personalities here. So I'd say that's you've got a different type of challenge. Let's go that way.
Okay. And then would you support legislation, speaking of the chicken sandwich, to make a state sandwich for Louisiana?
A state
and if
sandwich,
so,
what do you
what
think that
would
would be? Oh, that's a good one. You know, shrimp po' boy or crawfish po' boy, something
that's
like that.
That's been the most popular one. And one last fun question, which is the pictures on the legislative sites is getting a little old. Would you support legislation where the legislators have to update their pictures on a regular basis?
Does legislation do that? Why don't we just encourage them? I'm for less regulation. So
that's the best answer I've gotten yet. I love it. Representative Crews, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
William, if you got time for one more thing.
Absolutely.
What I think is really important about this session is the budget. I mean, that always we talk about it, but this time we have a historic opportunity. We can limit the growth of government. We can pay off some debt. We can reduce some recurring revenues or expenses. We've got the opportunity to do all this in one time here if we hold what's called the expenditure limit. We set this into place constitutionally where, hey, we apply a growth factor each year and we are not supposed to spend more money than that. Now we're able to spend it on debt and some other things, but we cannot spend it on all these other things that we normally do. So this is a historic opportunity. We're trying to encourage the Senate to hold the expenditure limit. We'll still have the money. We can still use it for other stuff, but we're not just going to go spend it willy-nilly on all kinds of projects we want, because we have a problem if we do that, is we're going to look at a shortfall here over the next 4 years of up to $2.1 billion. And I don't want higher taxes, and I don't think you do either. So if we can hold that expenditure limit, be responsible over money, pay down the debt, we'll not have that problem as big, or it may be mitigated entirely if we take some other steps.
I'm so glad you brought this up because it's pay now or pay later.
That's right.
You know, we pay the debt down now, we don't have to pay as much taxes later. But if we follow the lead of some people who want to raise the debt limit, spend the money now on recurring expenses, it's going to hit us harder later than if we just buckle down now, pay off some debt now. Is that what you're saying?
I am, but it's also, we owe these citizens or residents of the state have been employees, teachers, we owe them their retirement.
Right.
And we've got to fund this system to make sure that it's solvent. And right now it's unfunded. That's why it's called an unfunded accrued liability. We want to pay some of that off. We'd like to pay it all off, but at least pay a major portion of. And what that also does, it frees up the school systems because they do an employer contribution to help pay that. We want to pay that down, so instead of paying 24% of all their total payroll towards the compensation for the retirement, they only pay 20%. And that 4% is enough in some districts to offer a significant raise to the teachers. They may not want to do that, but we think it offers everybody an opportunity to do that if they choose.
And once again, I'm glad you brought this up for another reason, because I've seen the narrative on the other side the House was criticized for not doing pay raises, but instead you all offered to pay off debt.
That's
and
right.
I might be saying that a little bit wrong, but the gist of it's the same. It is matching up to what you're saying.
That's just right.
Which is, it's another way to get a pay increase without having to pay more taxes later.
That's right. I think anybody would be comfortable with this analogy. If you pay off your car, that money's freed up for something else. We want to pay off the car for the state, for the retirement systems of the teachers, so they can use that money to give the teachers a raise or whatever they want to do.
That's a great analogy. Representative Crews, thank you so much. Anything else before we leave?
I think I about covered it, William. I appreciate it. Sorry to run you around so much today.
It's no worries.
Crazy.
Look, I know how it is. That's why I get here and I park until I get, till somebody comes up, so to speak. Thank you so much. Everybody else, please share the interview. Let other people know what's happening in the House, and let people know how hard they're working for all of us. And we need to support them and get involved to keep it honest. Thank you so much. Have a good day.